Man, I'm bored. I wonder if any of those T-Rexes are left. Never anything good on TV. Can't even find a decent bar around here. Fuck my ass, there has got to be something to hunt.
So originally I hadn't planned on doing this. I already have enough videos on this channel involving this game, and let's be frank, dead air is probably more entertaining. See? Wasn't that infinitely more entertaining than just about everything I put out on this game? Don't pretend you didn't like it, because I got a Daytime Emmy for that. No, I kind of wanted to stray away from making a video about this game that was anything other than trying to be entertaining while hunting monsters because of a couple simple facts. Every time I open my mouth about Dark Souls and Souls-like games, I kind of sound like a goddamn retard, but every time I start talking about Monster Hunter, I feel like a retard. It's hard to talk about the game in any real context for a myriad issues related entirely to Monster Hunter itself. For one, I'm still learning how many things work. For another, I've never played any other games and have only just recently begun watching videos on them. And finally, I just don't think it would be very entertaining, and I would probably just make myself look like a giant jackass. Nothing new there. But then a couple of things happened. First, I looked at my hours logged in the game. And I've kind of long since passed the 300-hour mark, and there are incredibly few games that I have played even half that much, and I can count them on one hand. Second is where I find myself in the game, at rank 150, 160 something. I'm currently just grinding out levels between events, and there are reasons why that matters, which I may touch upon a little later. Need more reasons? How about the fact that I've become flat out addicted to the game? I'm actually having to pull myself away from the game to get work done on current projects, and yet here I still am talking about Monster Hunter. And the final reasons why I've decided to say fuck it, let's make another Monster Hunter video is... this is my channel. It's a dumping ground for whatever retarded stream of consciousness that oozes out of me. I don't care if nobody watches it. It's nice if they do, but ultimately, it's for me, and I just need to get it out of my head! So, with all that insanely retarded shit in mind, here comes my final thoughts on Monster Hunter World.
And here we have the noble Basilgeuse. No, that doesn't sound right. The noble Basilgeuse. No, that sounds worse. Here we have the noble Basilgeuse. The noble Basil Canadian Goose. Fuck it. Here we have the noble Beetlejuice in his natural habitat, bombing the ever-loving shit out of rural Japan.
Monster Hunter World has been a raging success for Capcom, and it's pretty easy to see why. It's not just a well-put-together game in a popular series, it's a triumphant work of experimentation and pushing the limitations of what the team is capable of. It's a game where there's something for everyone. Easy high-yield weapons and plenty of easy monsters to use them on for casual players, steadily rising challenges and equipment progression for those who are more into the full experience, insane levels of challenge and a disgustingly massive amount of mechanical depth and complexity for the diehards, carefully crafted gameplay that at low and mid-level play features a strong flow and even quiet time. Mechanical changes made to make actions even as simple as healing part of the fight, rather than something that you have to wait to disengage to do, thus removing unnecessary downtime. A plethora of weapons, each so unique in its playstyle and build options that it feels more like playing a completely different game than simply spicing things up. Massive open maps with life that has its own prerogatives, handcrafted and polished beyond anything that has attempted to reach a similar scope and scale in the last 15 years at least. The list will go on for days if I let it, and they have kept releasing even more content for free since the game came out. The base game features some 30 giant motherfuckers to cut your teeth on, with of course a handful of smaller guys to commit genocide on just for fun. It doesn't stop there, however, and they have since added 4 new monsters to the post-game. 2 to hunt regularly, 1 that is an event that comes back around from time to time, and the latest which exists mostly to make the player want to die. Each monster has their own armor sets and weapon trees, each focusing on skills mostly related to that monster. The player then gets to pick and choose, mix and match, and generally play fashion souls to create the builds they want to focus on, whether for generic hunting or specialized to kill specific monsters, entirely their choice. On top of the plethora of equipment comes items: healing, buffing, removing status effects, craftable from items gathered on the hunt or farmed at base, and craftable on the fly mid-hunt. The sheer amount of items available is compounded when added to mission-specific items, some of which will stop showing up outside of optional and story-based quests. To supplement what items can do for you, you have the canteen, a mechanic so rich that even coming up on the 400-hour mark, I still have not gotten around to unlocking everything for. Here you get to craft a meal, or take a pre-crafted meal for health bonuses, stamina boosts, resistances, damage, defense, and all before getting into the rabbit hole that are the feline mechanics. As a hunter, you will learn how to supplement your hunt with food buffs, coupled with items used and learning which stack with which to get the most out of every inch the game gives you. Once you are on the hunt, you scour every crevice of the massive maps that are packed with more polish and detail than, as I said, most games that have attempted the same lofty goal in a decade and a half. The amount of life with its own prerogatives, detail, and density of interactable environments isn't just unmatched, it's almost unprecedented. And for the first time in the series, it's all seamlessly put together, with the only loading screens being at the start and end of the hunt. It's built with love, care, and an attention to detail so great that every minute polygon and pixel screams with life. Small details stand out to fill out a world that isn't just breathing, but takes on a personality of its own. Take the Forge for example. Dudes so dedicated to their craftsmanship that you can watch as the conveyor belt gets backed up with the insane weapon parts that these guys are creating at a mind-boggling rate. As if seamless worlds being new wasn't enough, now monsters will interact with each other as well as the environment, tracking monsters through them marking their territory just to get ambushed by a different beast, and then the two begin to fight. The game is almost always presenting you with something new to see, if not do. What Monster Hunter World offers is an incredible amount of depth and complexity before the hunt even begins, and then offers biomes for the players to learn how to use to the best of their advantage in no ways that other games really have. Isn't it hilarious when the scout flies whip your neck around in an attempt to emulate Steven Seagal just to point you in the exact opposite direction of the monster? Don't you just wish they'd fix that? With everything this game has going on for it, surely a few things would have fallen through the cracks, right? Well, yes, a few even. Enemies are spam heavy. A Diablos will burrow 5 times in a row, monsters will roar multiple times in a row, Kushala specifically will roar, then wind buff, then gust in a descending order of recovery frames, leaving the player staggered for longer and longer while it gets geared up to score a free hit. It's, as far as most people can tell, algorithmically random. I think someone did the math and found monsters will allow only 4 seconds maximum between actions, and it tends to have some odd effects. The frenetic nature is pretty much required to keep the game from becoming boring incredibly fast, but it's obvious there were still some issues that needed to be hammered out. One of those issues is a design choice that developers can't seem to get away from, that of just creating larger monsters who deal incredibly increasing damage, whose entire bodies become hitboxes for attacks where that really shouldn't be the case. The idea is to make the monster more threatening and a greater challenge to the player, but has oftentimes resulted in monsters that just become more cheap than enjoyable. The Behemoth is kind of the absolute epitome of this. You can solo him, but he can wipe your party entirely, all because the monster just acted unpredictably sometimes. Essentially put, the devs have a tendency to rely on a high bullshit ratio in order to challenge the player when it comes to the post-game content. There's a steep learning curve, mind you, but the game has a tendency to suddenly power up attacks to auto-stun you, and then the monster turns around to combo kill you even though there's 3 other people fighting it. There are just things in the game that come off a little too much as a cheap shot taken at the player. The problems very rarely come up, but being nearly 400 hours into the game, That's actually kind of a lot when you think about it. Probably the worst the game gets is the introduction of the Behemoth. It's a gigantic multi-phase fight with multiple party kills you have to survive. It creates cover for you to hide behind, but it can actually destroy the cover, crippling the players and leaving them to just stare as they die.
You what? I'm sorry, I can't hear you over how hard I just dunked on you.
This game has some hilariously awesome mechanics. Just the simple fact that my healer build that I made specifically for the Behemoth fight gets more mounts than any other build I have seen, and with less effort, is just fucking magical. Behemoth's armor teaching me how some mechanics work, stacking them all together, and shoulder tackling Diablos' horns off is also just fucking magical. Learning this game looks like abusing other games. What some would see as exploits in gaming the system are the base requirements for Monster Hunter. It's like a playground for munchkins, and the sheer amount of wacky antics that are then had create this little segment that got a piece of its own video.
It was at this moment he knew. He fucked up.
Shocky Boy, Breezy Boy, Toasty Boy, Zombie Boy, Mountain Boy, Glowy Boy, and the Necroswanson spirit animal. The Elder Dragons, I feel, act as microcosms of everything that is great and bad about the game. Shocky Boy, or Kirin as it is known, is a great check of your understanding of the game's basic skills and combat mechanics. It acts as a gate for level progression and really demands that the player understand how resistance and weaknesses work. Sure, you can beat it with -20 to lightning and a thunder weapon, but most people learning the game are going to delve into the mechanics to see how the game works if they haven't figured it out by that point. Now, it's a monster that feels like ass the first time you go up against it and its tempered counterpart, but it's actually holding up a very strong roadblock to make sure you're actually learning the game. Would it be better if it had been tutorialized a bit better? Probably not. There's just so much in the game that any more tutorials than what already exist would have dragged the game down pretty heavily. The best thing you can do as the player is study its ins and outs to better fight the Kirin, and that puts you on the path to the greater endgame content. Glowy Boy, or as the normies call it, Xenojiva, is kind of a problem they have with set pieces. It's not challenging. The only time I ever failed a Xenojiva fight is when the people I was helping died. It's about as on rails as a Monster Hunter fight could be. He's massive, all flash, and severely underwhelming. He highlights perfectly the devs' issue of focusing too hard on style over substance sometimes. There's not too terribly much to say because there's just so very little to it. It's just a microcosm of one of the problems the game faces from time to time. My big black spike-bearing son Nergigante is overall a pretty damn easy fight. He's kind of a great sword player in dragon form, essentially a glass cannon, but he does have a huge random combo kill problem. Sometimes. Like I said, he just kind of shows how sometimes the random nature of monster behavior can fuck the player over. He's really very easy, and his intentionally designed combo kill can be avoided by choosing to just lay down and take it. No, seriously, that knockdown, the belly flop combo that he does, if you just lay there, you're invincible to it. It's pretty hilarious. I really like the design, and he only ever suffers from the unpredictable nature just fucking the player from time to time, but it's usually more funny than anything else with him. Toasty Boy Teostra, I think, mostly just suffers from being an older monster ported to the new game. He lacks a great deal of difficulty, excepting if you don't understand how resistances work. His wide-reaching Explodey Boy powers are honestly pretty easy to avoid, and even his worst attacks can be outright prevented. He really only gets bad in the Arch-Tempered mode, in which he's only ever as difficult as Tempered Lunastra at best. He's not a bad monster, it's just that for his introduction and his place as an Elder Dragon, my disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined. Oh, Breezy Boy, the focus of Happy Kushala Deora Day. He sucks. He puts down tornadoes, he flies around too much, he makes it so you can't get close to his torso, his flying around too much is counter to the flash pods, and while his tempered version is definitely annoying, is still more manageable than most of the other elders. His arch-tempered takes his time wasting to the ultimate degree and just goes to show how bad of a monster he is. He's not hard, he's not frustrating, he's just kind of a bad monster. All he has is wasting the player's time. Mountain Boy, or Zormagdaros, is just a shitty event. He's a mountain that you hit with your swords. It's overly long. It's tedious. It's unrewarding. It's so dumb that I chose not to get footage for it because that's how much it sucks. And finally, my boy, Zombie Boy, the Undead Jabberwock, or as you know him, Best Boy! Best monster in the game, 6 years running, first monster to EGOT. Men want to be him, women want him inside of them, children aspire to be just like him. He solved world hunger, described by over 200 fine ladies as having the world's most perfect dick. It's motherfucking Valhazak. Could you tell he's my favorite monster? Valhazak requires many things. He requires you to understand the effects the map has on the player. He requires you to understand resistance. He requires you to understand item usage. He requires you to understand weakness. He requires you to learn how to juggle all of that with learning monster attack patterns. He requires you to master the mechanics in their whole, and then teaches you how the equipment you can make with his parts can be utilized to gain an upper hand on him in the future. Or you can just break the game with things like the Vitality Mantle and Elder Seal. GG easy is skin condition having bitch! Every check the Kirin throws your way, Hazak gives you the endgame version of. He's the ultimate in forcing you to learn how to play the game and even giving you the option to outright exploit the fuck out of it. I just kinda love it. Even his tempered and arch-tempered builds follow suit. While arch-tempered may seem like an absolute shitfest at first, he just makes sure you've either acquired enough decorations or know which armor to get those skills from. His effluve laser is nuts, he has fake outs when if you fall for it then to attack his head, he can potentially one-shot you. He's my baby undead Jabberwock, and I fucking love him. The end. Post-release content brought 2 new Elder Dragons into the mix. Toasty Boy's girlfriend, who is a major fuck you to the player who comes with massive problems of her own, and Lady Gaga. I'm just not going to get too deep into Kolve Teroth's problems, as they're all related to the weapons you can get from her. She's beautiful, a great fight, an incredibly fun event, but many of those weapons you can get from her are broken, entirely random, no real way to farm, and there's hundreds of chances to get shit ones rather than any form of worthwhile loot. Fantastic armor though, and it's all amazing, strange, and humorous. Each Elder Dragon shows either some of the best, the worst, and all of the middle ground in between that the game has to offer, and it takes some real goddamn craftsmanship to achieve that, and just like with everything else they show that effort as well.
Holy fucking shit, it's a dinosaur! Jesus Christ, what the fuck? Oh my fucking god, fucking dinosaurs! Holy shit, what the fuck?
Monster Hunter World is a game where I am trying to learn every single thing about the mechanics. I don't do that with just about every non-fighting game that I play, except for maybe 1 or 2. I actively practice this like it's a fighting game. I learn this game like it's D&D, and I play it like it's pretty much the last game I will ever get to play, regular rage quits and all. I can't put this game down. It's gotten so bad that I'm supposed to be working on other projects and have instead chosen to make this video. So what would I like to see in the future? Well, first let's talk about layered armor. If you don't know what that is, layered armor is a special armor that provides no benefit, but you see it rather than your regular armor. I want it for all the armors, and not just some. Most of the armor that I like looking at is fucking worthless in the end game, and most of the useful armors I just find ugly. You'll probably think that I'm backwards and you'll like what I hate, and that's great. But I think with all the emphasis the devs are putting on layered armor, I just want the ability to play Bone Mommy again without sacrificing survivability. Aesthetics are the best DLC. Second, I want an expansion pack. Maybe even 2 of them. I'd like to see no less than 2 new maps, no less than 10 new monsters and or older monsters ported forward to fight in them, and maybe some of those crazy hybrids, rare pepes, and deviants they used to do, all for a single expansion. I'd pay good money for that, but mostly, what I would love to see in the future is just for this game to continue to thrive. It's got some pretty rancid pitfalls, but they're not game-breaking, and if you don't like them, you can usually avoid them pretty easily. And hey, maybe you'll be like me and that one monster you hated fighting so much will lead to you learning how to play the game to the point that it becomes the joke that you deal 900 goddamn damage straight to his dick! Fuck you, Diablos! Good luck having children now, you piece of shit! I am the monster hunting God! I'm the Necroswanson, and may the Sapphire Star light your motherfucking way.